December 1944. On a frozen ridge near the Saar, an American rifle squad stood around a German MG-42 they had just dragged out of a collapsed foxhole. The gun was ugly, black with oil, packed with mud on the bipod, still warm from the hands of the men who had abandoned it. Beside it sat 6 belts of ammunition, almost 1,800 rounds. For a squad holding a broken edge of the line, that was not a trophy. That was a wall. Sergeant Frank Delaney knew it the moment he saw the barrel, his own. 30 caliber machine gun had gone silent before noon. The BR team was down to 2 magazines. The mortar section behind them had nothing left but a tube, a base plate, and apologies. And across the white clearing in front of Delaney's position, German movement kept flashing between the trunks. Then Captain Arthur Merritt walked up the trench line. His boots were clean. His map case was polished. His voice had the hard, clipped sound of a man who believed a regulation was stronger than a bullet. He looked at the captured gun. Then he looked at Delaney. "Destroy it." Delaney thought he had misheard him. "Sir, that gun covers the whole draw." Merritt did not bend down to inspect it. He did not ask how much ammunition came with it. He did not ask how thin the line was. He only said, "No German weapon fires from my company position." 6 hours later, German infantry came through that exact draw. And the place where the MG-42 should have been was nothing but snow, splintered bark, and silence. Frank Delaney was 31 years old, a former truck mechanic from Cleveland who had learned machines before he learned soldiering. He was not romantic about combat. He did not talk about glory. He did not write heroic letters home. He did not believe a man became braver because a manual said he should. By December of 1944, Delaney had learned the real math of infantry war. How many rifle clips remained? How far a man could crawl under mortar fire? How quickly a squad became useless when its last automatic weapon went cold? That morning near the Saar, the math was simple. His position had one open approach on the left, one shallow ravine on the right, one frozen clearing in front of them, roughly 150 yards across, and not enough American ammunition to make the Germans respect any of it. The captured MG-42 changed that. It had a high rate of fire, a spare barrel, and enough belts to make the clearing nearly impossible to cross without paying for every yard. It was not perfect. Every soldier knew the sound of a German gun could confuse men nearby. Every officer knew captured weapons could create problems if nobody understood who was firing them. But Delaney's squad was isolated, low on ammunition, and expecting a counterattack before dark. In a place like that, the question was not whether the weapon was German. The question was whether it worked. Delaney and 2 privates laid the gun behind a fallen spruce, cut a shallow slot into the snow-packed dirt, and pointed the barrel toward the draw. They did not cheer. They did not joke. They worked quickly, the way tired men work when a useful thing has appeared at the exact moment usefulness matters. Then Captain Merritt arrived. Merritt was 36, a trained officer with a careful uniform and a reputation for perfect paperwork. His men did not call him cruel. That would have made him easier to understand. They called him exact. He inspected chin straps, corrected posture in shell holes, sent back requests if the forms were not properly initialed. He believed discipline was what separated an army from a mob, and in ordinary circumstances, he was not entirely wrong. But the front was no longer ordinary. The roads were clogged with trucks. Supply points were behind schedule. Winter clothing arrived late or not at all. Ammunition came forward in the wrong calibers, on the wrong vehicles, or not until the dead had already been counted. Merritt saw all of that and reached for the one thing he could still control: rules. When he saw the German machine gun, his face tightened as if Delaney had dragged a disease into the position. "Sergeant, break the receiver," he said. Delaney kept his voice low. "Sir, our own gun is empty. Then you will hold with rifles. With respect, sir, rifles will not stop a platoon crossing that draw." Merritt glanced at the German belts. "That weapon makes a sound every American on this ridge will recognize as enemy fire." "Then tell battalion we have it," Delaney said. "Put it in the report. Mark the position. But if they come through those trees, this is the only thing that can keep them off us." That answer should have ended the argument. It did not. Merritt stepped closer, lowering his voice so only the squad could hear. "American soldiers will not depend on German equipment while I command this company. Smash it." Delaney looked at the gun, then at the 6 belts. Then at his men, who were staring at him with the terrible hope of soldiers waiting for a leader to make sense. He could disobey. He could be relieved on the spot. He could lose the position before the Germans even attacked, because no squad survives long when its chain of command breaks in the open. So Delaney obeyed. The first blow cracked the feed cover. The second bent the operating parts. A private turned away when Delaney smashed the receiver hard enough to send a broken pin into the snow. They dragged the dead weight to the lip of the ravine and shoved it over. It rolled once, caught on a root, then disappeared under white branches. A working weapon. A spare barrel. Almost 1,800 rounds. Gone. Merritt gave one final instruction before leaving the position. No enemy arms are to be retained anywhere on this line. That order reached farther than Delaney knew. Later in the afternoon, another patrol brought in 2 German anti-tank launchers and a canvas bag of rockets. They were crude, but they were close-range weapons, exactly the kind that mattered if an armored half-track pushed through the trees. Merritt had those destroyed, too. Not because they failed. Not because they were unsafe. Not because anyone had a better replacement. Because they were not American. By dusk, the forest turned blue. Snow crusted on the shoulders of the men in the forward holes. Steam came from their mouths in short white bursts. The line went quiet in the way that did not comfort anybody. Delaney checked each man himself. 1 rifle with 4 clips. 1 carbine with a cracked stock. 1 BAR with a nearly empty pouch. 2 grenades so old with mud that nobody trusted the pins. He did not say what every man already understood. If the Germans came at the left draw, the squad could slow them. They could not stop them. The attack began with a single flare. It opened above the trees and hung there, white and cruel, turning every foxhole into a target. Then machine pistols cracked from the far side of the clearing. German infantry moved in short rushes, appearing and vanishing between the trunks. Behind them came the heavier growl of an armored half-track, nosing through the trees where the destroyed launchers might have mattered. Delaney shouted for controlled fire. The first volley dropped 2 men at the edge of the clearing. The second volley scattered the next group. Then the rifles began to run dry. One man yelled for another clip. No one had one. The BR fired a short burst, coughed, fired again, then clicked on empty. The German assault crossed the middle of the draw. That was the exact strip the MG-42 had been meant to cut in half. Instead, there was no wall of fire. Only scattered rifle shots. Only men trying to fill a machine gun's job with hands that were freezing around empty metal. A grenade exploded against the fallen spruce where Delaney had built the firing notch. A private named Haskins was hit before he could crawl backward. Corporal Meade went down, trying to drag him. 2 more men were cut off when the half-track swung its gun toward the trench bend. The position folded in less than 10 minutes, not because the men lacked courage, not because they ran at the first shot, because courage does not replace ammunition, and pride does not cover a clearing. By midnight, the surviving men reached battalion headquarters in 1s and 2s, faces gray with cold and shock. Delaney came last. His left sleeve was stiff with frozen blood. He carried 2 dog tags in his fist because there had been no time to take anything else. The battalion commander heard the first version of the story and did not believe it. Then a second survivor said the same thing. Then a runner confirmed that the captured gun had been intentionally destroyed before the attack. By dawn, the report had climbed higher than Captain Merritt ever wanted it to climb. And when George S. Patton heard that a functioning enemy machine gun had been smashed, while an American perimeter was nearly out of ammunition, he did not send back a polite question. He sent for the officers. Patton arrived before the morning fog had lifted. The jeep came hard down the road, throwing dirty snow against the side of the command tent. The general stepped out wearing his helmet, his heavy coat, and the kind of expression that made staff officers suddenly remember urgent business somewhere else. He did not begin with a speech. He began with inventory. How many rounds came with the gun? No one answered quickly enough. Patton turned to the battalion commander. How many? Approximately 1,800, sir. How many American machine gun rounds were available at the forward left position? None, sir. How many men lost in that gap? The tent became still. 6 confirmed, sir. Patton looked at Merritt. Did you order the captured gun destroyed? Merritt stood straight. I did, General. Was it broken? No, sir. Was the ammunition usable? Yes, sir. Did the sergeant tell you his own automatic weapons were out? A smaller pause. Yes, sir. Patton moved closer. Then explain to me why a live gun became scrap iron before the enemy came through the trees. Merritt had prepared for anger. He had prepared for accusations. He had not prepared for that kind of quiet. Sir, the use of enemy weapons creates recognition danger. The report of German fire from our own position could have drawn confusion. I believed it was necessary to maintain discipline and proper American standards. Patton let the words hang in the cold air. Recognition danger was real. No competent officer ignored it. But there is a difference between managing danger and worshiping procedure while men are counting their last cartridges. Patton pointed toward the ridge. You had a known gap, no American automatic fire, enemy movement in front of you, and a captured weapon with nearly 2,000 rounds. Your answer was to destroy the only machine gun that could cover the approach. Merritt said nothing. Patton's voice sharpened. You did not preserve discipline. You preserved your image of discipline. There is a difference. Every officer in the tent understood the line. A rule is meant to serve the fight. It is not meant to become a little flag and officer plants on the bodies of his own men. Patton turned to the staff captain beside him. Relieve him. Merritt's face changed for the first time. General. Patton cut him off. You are relieved of command pending formal action. You will surrender your sidearm. You will stand before the men who survived that position, and you will tell them why their dead had no machine gun. The tent went silent again. Then Patton added the part no one forgot. And after that, you will take a shovel. The burial ground was behind the command post, where the road dipped toward a ruined orchard. The soil was half frozen. The top layer broke in plates. Beneath it was black mud that clung to the shovel and made every stroke heavier than the last. Merritt worked under guard without his rank pins. No polished map case, no clean boots, no careful distance from the consequences. Only a shovel, 6 grave cuts, and the eyes of men who had watched a useful weapon vanish into a ravine because one officer needed the line to look proper. Delaney stood nearby with his arm bandaged against his chest. He did not smile. No one did. This was not revenge in the way civilians imagine revenge. There was no cheering, no satisfaction, no neat balance restored. The dead were still dead. The clearing was still lost, and 6 families would receive letters that sounded cleaner than the truth. But everyone who watched understood the lesson. A commander can be strict. A commander can be hard. A commander can demand discipline until the last man curses his name. But the moment discipline becomes vanity, it stops protecting soldiers and starts feeding on them. Later that day, word moved along the line faster than any written order. Captured equipment was not to be treated as a souvenir. It was not to be waved around like a prize. It had to be identified, reported, controlled, and used with care. But if a functioning weapon stood between American soldiers and an enemy assault, no officer was to destroy it merely because the steel had been made on the wrong side of the border. That was the distinction Merritt had missed. The Army did not need less discipline. It needed discipline with a brain. The men understood it immediately. A rifle did not become dirty because it was foreign. A belt of ammunition did not become dishonorable because the markings were German. A launcher did not know whose flag had been sewn onto the coat of the man who carried it. A weapon was a tool. The moral weight belonged to the person deciding whether it would be used to keep men alive. Frank Delaney never wrote a grand account of that morning. Men like him rarely did. He remembered smaller things, the clatter of the German belt links, the look on Haskins's face when the BR clicked empty, the strange quiet after the half-track pulled back, the broken receiver lying somewhere below the ravine under fresh snow. He remembered Patton's anger too, but not because it was loud, because it was aimed at the right thing, not at the sergeant who obeyed, not at the exhausted riflemen who could not stop a machine with empty rifles, not at the dead men for being unlucky. At the officer who had mistaken his own pride for principle. That is why the story survived. Not because one captured gun could have won a war. not because every battlefield problem has a simple answer. It survived because, for one terrible night, the difference between judgment and arrogance could be measured in yards. 150 yards of frozen clearing, 1,800 rounds thrown away, 6 bodies in the mud, and one general who understood that the front line does not care what a regulation looks like on clean paper. It only cares what still fires when the enemy steps out of the trees. The gun was German. The mistake was American.